Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This, I think, is our third installment with kind of keeping up with COVID locally and with the leadership at Piedmont Newton. We have David Kent, CEO, and Dr. Norris Little, Chief Medical Officer at the hospital. And before we get started, I just want to say thank you for your leadership in the community and keeping our community safe, help keep our businesses open and getting our kids back in school, and just kind of returning to some sense of normalcy here locally. So I just want to start off by saying thank you. I will turn it over to you guys for an update locally, kind of where we are with our COVID numbers, and then maybe we'll jump into some information on vaccine.
Well, thank you, Debbie, for your kind words, and thank you, and thanks to the Chamber and all of its members for supporting Piedmont Newton through this last year. I've said it before, I can't say it again, just the amount of support that we've received from businesses and other parts of our community, churches, civic organizations, free meals, free food, well wishes, frankly, understanding of what we're going through has just been tremendous. And so we're just so honored to be able to be in position to help our community at the time of greatest need, and really appreciate everyone's support as we've done that. I'll start by giving a little bit of a update as to where we are, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Little, who can talk a little bit more about the vaccines. But right now, the good news is that our overall volume at the hospital is down pretty significantly over what we saw during our peak months of December and January. So, the bad news then was that it was pretty bad. We had a lot of COVID patients. We had a lot of very sick people in our hospital. And over the last month or so, those numbers have begun to fall almost as quickly as they rose after Thanksgiving. And so right now, we're about a quarter of the total volume that we had back in January. And we're at a very reasonable level. Obviously, each individual case of COVID is terrible. And so for individuals who are still suffering with it, they're certainly not out of the woods, and we're doing everything we can for them. But when you step back and look at the total picture, we just don't see as many COVID positive patients coming into our emergency department as we did a few months ago. And so, it's really, with the exception of our visitor policy, it's business as usual here at the hospital. We're doing all of our elective procedures. We are allowing visitors in for periods of time, still one at a time, and that policy hasn't changed. We may look at that in the coming months if the numbers continue to stay low. And then really right now it's a race between the vaccine and its distribution and how many patients can get it versus the next likely outbreak, which would be most likely sometime this fall. But if we get enough people vaccinated before then, we could really see a much lower peak than what we saw back this past wintertime. So really encourage people to get their vaccines. What's been interesting about that is not everyone, even in the healthcare field, who has been offered the vaccine has chosen to take it. And so one of the things that we're really interested in doing is educating the public about what the vaccine is, what it isn't, and tell you that our position is that if you have access to take it, that you should take it, and we believe it's safe for you to take it. And we would ask you to take it for both yourself and your loved ones and society in general. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Little to talk a little bit about the vaccine and why it is our position that you should take it if you have access to it moving forward. So with that, Debbie, I'll be happy to answer any questions when it's all done about, kind of where we are with our volumes, et cetera. But for now, let's go over to Dr. Little.
Hello. Glad to have the opportunity to talk with you about vaccines. We just had another vaccine approved for distribution, which is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So now we currently have three that are approved, the Pfizer and the Moderna, which are the two mRNA vaccines, and then now the Johnson & Johnson, which is a live attenuated vaccine. So the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a more typical, traditional vaccine type or production that we've utilized in the past. And I think its efficacy is, in the 70% range, which is still very good. And so I have people go, well, will I be less protected if I get this vaccine? And although the 70% may be a little lower than with the mRNA vaccines, if you look at the issues with the prevention of severe COVID and or fatality from COVID, it really is extremely effective in preventing that. And I think that's our primary goal with this is to prevent severe COVID. So I think our recommendation and my recommendation, if I had one available and the Johnson & Johnson was available, I would take that vaccine. I think it's helpful to have these different modalities out there. I think in my reading, the side effects from the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, it's a one-dose vaccination, and side effects are pretty minimal. So all those things are good. There has been some liberalization by the FDA regarding the temperature requirements for holding and shipping the Pfizer vaccine, which may make the logistics of distribution of that vaccine a little bit easier. So I think, excuse me, any of the three vaccines would be recommended and encouraged. There are two issues with COVID that we're trying to prevent. Of course, we're trying to prevent hospitalization and death related to COVID, but there are a significant number of patients who develop moderate COVID that have very, very long-term adverse health effects from that they may not be hospitalized, but they're quite ill, or they're hospitalized and they don't end up in the ICU on a ventilator. So, those people, we see the number, the 500,000 number in terms of the people who've died from COVID, but I would tell you that there are at least that many people who've had moderate disease, survived COVID, but then have long-term adverse effects on their health. And so the vaccine is our way of prevention of those issues with our population. So we strongly encourage vaccination. We want people to be educated that the vaccines are safe. We haven't, in the reports released by the CDC regarding safety of the mRNA vaccines, we're not seeing any increased adverse effects related to those vaccines more than other traditional vaccines, such as the herpes zoster vaccine, influenza vaccine, and others. So there do not appear to be any long-term effects, and the side effects that do occur are short-lived and do not seem to be persistent. So we would like for people to be educated around that and pursue vaccination when they have opportunity. The news, we've seen that the rollouts of vaccine, that we should have enough. I know the president announced for the entire country by May. you know, the issues around that, I think, will be beyond production and distribution, but also logistically where will people go to be vaccinated. So, you know, we will continue as Piedmont to vaccinate the public, but we hope that the opportunities for vaccination will be broader. You know, that they're rolling that into primary care offices and other places for people to have multiple different options to get vaccinated. So we'll see over the coming weeks what that looks like in terms of the logistics of distribution. Yeah. But I'm excited about the people that have chosen to be vaccinated. We want people to be assured that this is safe and effective, and we think that this is our best option for moving back to some sense of normalcy in our culture, and getting back to some normal and with what we all like to do. So any questions that I can answer?
That's great information to get out. I know yesterday Georgia Tech announced that they will be implementing a regular fall semester schedule this fall. So that was exciting news to hear. And I hope other schools will follow suit. I know we're kind of starting to hear some things that are going to happen more in person than what we've seen, here over the past year. Everything kind of turned virtual. We're starting to see some states open up some things. So that's great information to have. Do you all have any information on when we would be getting any additional product, or when we get to that next phase, I guess, the 1B, is it?
Mm-hmm. I don't have anything specific. That's all been under the control of the federal government,
Right.
And we get the product and the allocation when they send it. There's not a lot of communication that we receive about when or how much we're going to receive. I think our hope, at least when I've talked to other leaders, is that the distribution of vaccine will become more widely distributed, so that instead of having these mass, vaccination clinics where people have to go, for example, to the horse park or some other place, that through the pharmacies, primary care offices, public health department, all those other locations would be able to manage some of the vaccines, and make it easier for individuals to access a place to get vaccine, but the specifics related to that, I haven't seen it to date.
Yeah, and I think it's good information. What you touched on, we've heard over the last week we reached that 500,000 mark with the deaths, but then on top of that, probably the equal amount that have had some long-lasting effects. And I don't know that piece of it is getting told to help people make the decision to get that vaccine. So that's great information. I had not thought of that. The probably the same amount of people having those long-term effects from COVID. So thank you for bringing that to our attention and updating us, because that's just another reason to encourage people to get the vaccine.
It is such a problem that Piedmont has set up what they call long haul COVID clinics because of how common it is for people to survive the illness but have long-lasting issues or health issues related to it, and that we've set up clinics just to provide care for those individuals.
Wow, that's great information.
Yeah, and, one of the things I would say, Debbie, is when there are folks who are still choosing not to get the vaccine, and the reasons for that vary from being very legitimate. I have prior health issues that I'm concerned about, to I just don't have enough information or education, or I'm afraid that I don't understand the implications of what I'm taking. And here's just the facts as we know them. Over 500,000 people have died from COVID, and probably that many or more have suffered and will continue to suffer with their health as a result. So far, and I was just on the CDC website today, almost 79 million people have received a dose of the vaccine. And to our knowledge, none of them have passed away from receiving the vaccine. And so it is our belief that if you will get COVID at some point, there's enough prevalence in the community that you will get it at some point, especially as we start to reopen the economy, especially as we reopen states, we lift mask mandates, all kids go back to school in force, all the things that we know are going to happen. At some point in your life, you're going to get the flu most likely, and at some point you're going to get COVID. And to me, the choice is you can take the vaccine, which there have been 79 million given, which I'm not sure that there's a clinical trial in the history of the world with 79 million participants where nothing terribly bad has gone wrong, versus we know what COVID can do in the short run. And so to me, just logically, the choice is pretty clear as to what we ought to be doing. And again, there are some legitimate reasons why someone wouldn't get the vaccine. They have pre-existing health conditions, and they need to follow the advice of their physicians in those cases. But for the average person, to us, it just makes sense to take the vaccine to protect yourself, to protect your family, to protect your community.
Mm-hmm. And do you see this? I know there's, will the COVID vaccine or COVID shot be something you'll probably looking to have to get year over year, like you do a flu shot, for instance?
Well, Deb, that's an interesting question, and I know that if you were to go on, search that on the internet right now, you'd probably get about 6 different answers to that, and so I would say that's certainly a possibility, but we just have to give this some time to know that for sure. We don't. We're so early in this that we don't know how long the immunity lasts for. If you've had COVID, we don't really know how long that immunity lasts. If you get the vaccine, we don't know how long that immunity is going to last. And we don't know how this disease will shift. Like, for example, influenza, we have to put out new vaccines every year for that.
Right.
For the measles, we never change that vaccine. So we don't yet know how this disease is going to behave over the long term. And so I prefer to say we're still looking at this. We're early on in this, and I think speculation around things sometimes just makes people more confused. I'd rather say we're just going to have to give this some time and look at it and study it and get the answers as we go forward.
Well, that makes sense, definitely. And in my former career, I was in real estate, and we always said in Georgia, either you had termites or you were going to get termites. And it sounds like COVID is a lot the same. Either you had it or you're going to get it. So yep. Odds are in your favor to get the vaccine, as you mentioned. So that's great information to get out to our community. So I don't have any other questions unless you all have something you would like to add.
Don't think
No,
so.
just thanks again for the opportunity, and look forward to continuing to do these little sessions.
Yes, yes. I think our members and our community have appreciated it. We've gotten some good feedback on this. So again, thank you. If anybody watching has questions, you can put them in the bottom under the YouTube video on our YouTube page, and we will see you guys again in a couple of weeks. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.